what to look for in people and what to, when to get rid of someone. Like, that's a huge thing, right?
Expectations are where relationships will flourish or fail.
People know that I care about them and I want them to succeed.
Today is episode number 31 of the Mission Control Podcast. We have Diego Dante in the house. What's up, Diego?
What's happening, brother? How you doing?
Man, I'm doing splendid. Just peachy. How are you, sir?
Just fantastic, man. I'm just living and loving life.
That's what's up, man. This episode's proudly brought to you by, Roofer. They're great. If you need anything as far as instant measurements of roofs, clean and their proposals they're second to none.
It's the best.
Your prospective customers will have no choice but to buy from you. Hit up Roofer. And also brought to you by Send Digital Agency. Dude, I'm very grateful for you taking some time to kick it this morning. We're running what we call back-to-backs, all right? So we just did the Rise Above show. We hopped into another studio. Now here we are doing the Mission Control Podcast.
And we did the first episode of season 2 of the Rise Above show. So we're back, and I just figured, man, we talked about it a while back. I was like, let's make it happen. First episode back.
Hot damn, let's get it. When is that episode going to come out?
We shall see.
Okay. I was going to say, because this one probably won't drop for about 4 or 5 weeks. We got a few
We're probably going to be around. I'm sure we'll be at around the same time frame.
All right. Sweet.
I want to build a little bank of them before I start dropping them out. So,
yeah, some folks have been like, well, why am I 4 weeks, 5 weeks out? I'm like, dude, because I get anxious. If I get below 4 episodes in the hopper, I have crippling anxiety. I can't. I'm sorry. When I stopped
recording them, I had 21 episodes ready to be uploaded. So I had 21 episodes. I was 21 episodes ahead of time. We got to the point where I was like, man, I got to start. We started uploading twice a week. But it was crazy.
You think? Can you get me a sponsorship from Dr. Pepper? You think? I always drink.
I don't have any connections there, but if you find a connection over there, let's get them to RoofCon as well.
Okay,
I'm sure that they got a good budget.
To, drink it like this from now on. You can't
there
see
you go.
it. You don't know what I'm drinking. I've made the request once and tagged you guys, but Dr. Pepper, if you're watching, hit me in the DMs. Let's figure something out. So many questions. So, Diego, you worked at RoofCon. Then you didn't work at RoofCon. Now you're back with the team at RoofCon. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Talk about it. Talk about the start, the transition back, motivations. I want to hear it all.
Okay. So, I actually started out in marketing. I worked for 7 years as a marketing director for a broadband company. Company got bought out, and I connected with Hunter on Facebook. I had a job offer that would have moved me out to Atlanta, and I didn't want to do that. I was going to make pretty good money doing that, but I just didn't want to move my family out to Atlanta. Hunter offered me a job. It was about an hour away from where we were living. I was like, okay, I could make that happen. And really, it was really I was coming in to do roofing sales for Cornerstone for his roofing company. And I don't know if people know Hunter Ballou. He was the one that got me in initially. So I came in, worked roofing sales for a little while. Hunter knew I was a marketing guy, but really there wasn't really a position that made sense for me at the time. So we talked about it. We said, hey, he had just thrown RoofCon 1 in Nashville. He said, man, I could really use someone like you to do that, but I'm just not at the point where I can justify bringing someone in full-time to do that. I was like, well, think about it. If that makes sense for right now, just come in. And I just really liked Hunter at the time. I was like, when I met him, I was like, man, this guy's super legit, all this stuff. And I liked the culture, and I liked that they were giving back, all that stuff, right? So so I came in, started doing roofing sales. That was January 2020. And then a few months later, all this talk of stuff getting shut down with COVID and stuff, we didn't know what was going to happen. So I said to Hunter, man, if you need anything if you need anything on the back end side, like if you need any sort of help, for me to come in, sell sponsorships, whatever, let me come in and I'll do that. Cause we didn't know, what was going to happen back then. Right. And so he said, all right, like I can pay you for 2 weeks here, and if we can make something happen for RoofCon, let's make it happen. So I came in day one, started making some connections on Facebook group, and I met Phil Sanov, Morgan & Morgan, and he basically, we got him to I pitched him on coming to RoofCon and being a sponsor with us, and basically the rest was history. After that, we launched RoofCon, and we did RoofCon 2020 in Houston, Texas that year, and had a great small team, just myself, our events director, and Hunter. Really, we put together that first RoofCon, and then we grew the team and blah blah blah, and then it kind of made sense. We launched Revolt, which was our mastermind, and it made more sense for me to run the Revolt mastermind. And so I did that for about a year. And then after a while, after like at the beginning of last year, there was a lot of stuff that really had, that had happened, in the sense of like, I wanted to continue growing, and I felt at the time like, man, I can't continue growing if I'm just an employee of a company. Like, I got to go and I got to do something bigger and better and like all this stuff. So I decided to leave the company, and I went to run a roofing company. And it's so funny because I told every time I'd meet someone and they would ask me about what I was doing before and how I ended up at the roofing company, I was like, the way I described it to everyone, I was like, I feel like I'd left my dream job to come work a job that I'm just not super passionate about because I'm trying to make more money. I described it like that to a bunch of people, right? And so, of course, like, me and Hunter stayed connected because we're buddies, right? So sure. We kept I was in Revolt. We would hang out, all the stuff, and then we came to RoofCon, and then it hit me like, man, I miss this. Like, and ultimately, if I'm just being extremely transparent, like, I definitely left initially because I was trying to make more money, and I don't think there's anything necessarily, wrong with that. I just realized that I wasn't as fulfilled doing that, and that really was what fueled me coming back, was just coming back to something that is extremely fulfilling for me, to be able to run the RoofCon organization and to be able to run an event that I'm super passionate about and be able to give back to the industry and be able to help out the roofing community and just be able to be more focused, or be more impact driven, more than just money driven.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a real thing that a lot of people, they realize that at different points in their life. Some people, realize it early. Some people realize it really late. And then everything in between. I think it's really important to be fulfilled. Feeling like you have to go to work and you're going to work. I'll give you an example. When I do real estate, I have a real estate license, and I really don't practice. But, like, when a friend wants me to sell their house, it's like, fine. All right. It's not too much work, and I get to do, like, the negotiating part, which I love, right? Like, that's the fun part. Like, going helping people buy a house, for me, that's a no for me, dog. But, like, when I do real estate, even though, like, in that side of it, like, every minute that I put into it, I feel like I'm working. Mm-hmm. I'm working right now. I fucking love this. It's amazing. I'm chopping up with Diego. It's a good time. I can spend 3 hours doing this, and it's like, man, where'd that last 15 minutes go? Oh, it's been 3 hours? Holy shit. So finding things that you're passionate about, dude, dude, that's the ticket. Being fulfilled, you're making an impact. I mean, that's amazing. What was the first moment at RoofCon when you came back this year that you're like, I missed this? Was it when you were chopping up with me and Ty?
That was definitely it, man. Dude, you know what's so funny, though? You know what's so funny is that we walked in, and I felt like it's so funny because I make so many connections through Facebook groups and mainly through Facebook, right? So all these people that I know, and I'm sure for people like you, it's the same thing. Like you go to these events and you can't walk 3 feet without seeing someone that you know, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like people want to ask you about all the things that you've posted about on Facebook. They want to ask about the adoption, and they want to ask about the 100-mile June, and they want to ask about the stuff that you're doing with your marketing, or they want to ask about how you're running the company and all the stuff, because to you, you're just posting your life away, right? But people are like really interested in like one piece of it. And so at what point did I know? I don't know the answer to that, but but I just enjoy the entire event itself, and it's a good time, man.
Yeah. It's a very interesting dynamic what we have in social media and like the roofing events specifically, like everything you just explained, right? Like there's people that I meet for the first time and I feel like I've known them since fucking high school. With all the interaction, we've never talked on the phone, we've never talked via Facebook Messenger, we've never done a Google Meet, but then, you know, it's like it's almost like you feel like one of your friends that you haven't seen in 10 years and you just hit in stride, you sync up immediately. It's like you never missed a beat. It's funny feeling a similar emotion about somebody you've never fucking talked to outside of back and forth on Facebook or in Messenger.
Well, think about this. The people that you grew up with, the only thing you really have in common with them are that they're your same age and that they just happen to, like, their parents happen to live in the same town that your parents lived in, right? They didn't even make that choice. Versus at these events, a lot of the times, now not all events are created equal, but I'll use RoofCon as the example. When you go to RoofCon, you've got people that are in your same industry, probably passionate about some of the same things that you're passionate about. They've made a lot of the same life choices that have led them up to that point. They're probably, at least at RoofCon, I would say a lot of those people are really, they're probably people of high integrity, or at least that's something that attracted them to that conference, right? Or so you have a lot in common with the people that are showing up to these events in general. So I almost feel like, yeah, I mean, I'm more excited to speak with you and to see the people at RoofCon probably than I would be to see some of my buddies from, you know, not to take anything away with the people I grew up with, but I just don't feel like I have a lot in common. I mean, but it is what it is. Like after 12 years of growing apart with these people, or however long, like you just don't have that much in common with them versus like us chopping it up on Facebook or whatever, because all of a sudden, like we just have so much more in common than the people that I grew up with at this point in my life.
Yeah, and there's that relationship where you need 20 to 30 more leads and I can get them for you, right? And
I'm still waiting on that message from you. I told you I'd hire you the second that you messaged me that, but
it's all about timing, all right? I'm waiting to shoot my shot. I'm setting up the offense as we speak.
You're a lot more cautious than a lot of the other people in my inbox then. Because
it's everybody wants the quick hit, the easy route. Like it's easy enough to spam out 500 messages and somebody will bite, right? I don't know, but I took a different approach early on, and I mean it served us well. It doesn't mean it's the best approach for everybody, but you know, I never wanted to be the marketing guy that's like, this fucking dude keeps reaching out to me. I don't think it's productive. I think like if you come from a place of value, if you deliver value to people, dude, I literally, so before we launched that last podcast that we just shot, I got a message. Let's see here. I got somebody posted on something I posted December 10th of 2022. Loved your podcast on Facebook groups and free leads. How do we get, the guides that you were talking about? And then they hit me up like, hey, can we please set up a call to help with marketing?
Yeah, it's awesome.
So it's
well, my first impression of you was a contractor. You were probably one of the first marketers in the industry that I'd ever heard of. And it was, hey, my guy Michael Stearns is super legit. Like that, if anyone ever needs anything, that's who you should use. So I definitely think that you've done a great job. And that was Brandon Brawley, which you know Brandon.
That's my guy.
Yeah, so
Brandon.
Yeah, he's probably in the same, and now we're in the same, working out of the same office building. But Brandon, talking you up in person, right? So that goes such a long way, man. Like, you've done it the right way. You've developed those solid relationships, and you've done the work, and so people recommend you. And it's the same thing with roofing contractors, right? Like, you can spam people asking for needing a roof or whatever on Facebook, and that could work. But I know I'm going to get people going with this because I've almost ended up being the anti-door knocking guy, and I'm not. But how much more effective too is it when you've got someone saying, "Hey, if you need a roof, you should use my guy Diego over here because they did such a great job. They communicated well. They did a great job. They cleaned up. They XYZ, right?" So same thing with anyone. Like, you're a roofing contractor, you're a marketing company, you're a lawyer in the industry, whoever you are in the industry. Like, that's going to go longer. That's going to go further than anything else that you could do.
Yeah, and I mean, if we're being honest, anytime you're trying to sell something, if you have somebody coming to you asking you for it, you hold the cards. You're in a position of strength much more so than, hey, if you can handle 20, 30 leads, get back to me and let me show you how. But at any rate, I digress. I'm sorry. Let me ask you this. I'm interested, and I'm sure everyone else is going to be interested, whether they thought about it or not. What is one thing when you left RoofCon and roofing.com now that you didn't have when you started your company, Roofers LLC, that you now have as going through the experience of being hands-on in a roofing company? What's a piece of knowledge? What's an experience? What's something that you have now that you didn't have when you left the first time?
Experience leading a team, experience recruiting, like just dealing with a team in general. Even up until the point that I left, I had my entire life, I had been a department of one. And when we came into RoofCon, when I was doing roofing sales, when I was doing marketing at RoofCon, when I was leading the revolt, like actual revolt, when I was all that stuff, I never once had a single employee. And I went into, running the roofing company, and we did really well initially. Just basically it was me and another guy, and like, I sold it, he built it, and we did really well. And then I said, great, now we just have to bring some people on. And I did terrible at that initially because I expected, we talked about this on my podcast, of like, I expected myself from other people, and that it didn't happen, right? So I had to get better at recruiting. I had to get better at leading a team. I had to get better at firing. I had to get better at, like, firing the first person ever sucked. But, also, like, just all those things just teach you, and you can learn pretty quickly too, like, how to, what to look for in people, and what to, when to get rid of someone. Like, that's a huge thing, right? So I think just people, like, leading people in general, that was a big thing that I learned being away.
And how has that benefited you since being back?
Well, I've only been back 4 weeks, 3.5 weeks, but we've now I have a team here, right? So I'm leading the team. There's 6 or 7 people. So just coming in from the beginning and being like, all right, we got to set KPIs for everyone, because it just, like, it's not that I don't like anyone or anything like that. It's just a matter of like, what is it that I'm expecting from you? And everyone on the team knows what's expected of them now, and including myself, right? So I have KPIs for myself, and so I feel like that's a huge thing of just setting expectations with people, letting them know like, hey, I love you, and for any reason like you don't hit your KPIs, we're going to have to let you go, but it's not that we don't love you, it's just that this probably isn't the job for you. And if I would have learned that, like, that took me a while to learn, but I realized that like one of my biggest problems is that I want to be friends with everyone, and I've kept people around for longer than they needed to be there too, because I just want to be friends with them, right? I don't want to have to get rid of them and whatever, but I think that everyone here on the team is thriving because there's clear expectations and people know that I care about them and I want them to succeed, and we're looking at everything weekly, like, and the people that, if let's just say, for example, like if there's anything where anyone ever starts to slip down, like, the plan is like, all right, let's sit down and figure out how to make it better, right? Because I want everyone to succeed. Not just I want to be friends with everyone, but I want everyone to thrive.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. Expectations are where relationships will flourish or fail. And it doesn't matter whether it's, you're in a hierarchy and you're managing a team, if it's a coworker that you depend on, if it's your significant other, your children, right? They need to know what they can expect and should expect from you. You need to know the same, and then you got to know that you can count on one another, right? I think that's a really good point, dude.
I'm also in this interesting predicament now too, and at the roofing company, where I'm not the owner of the company, but I'm the person running the show, right? And so I have to take care of the company the same way that Hunter would take care of the company. And I have to be, I have to have the same level of passion and responsibility that he would have running the team. And so that's a big thing too that I learned at the roofing company, because it was the same thing at the roofing company. I was running the show, but I was not the owner of the company. And so I had to be there as I had to always ask myself, like, is this like, how do I give this the same level of respect and even love for the company that the owner would give?
You can see how that'd be challenging.
Yeah. I mean, it's all a matter of like, I think ultimately, like, I am the type of person that I just care a lot, and I give things, I probably care too much at some points, and I feel like, I don't know, it's just a good learning opportunity for me to be out. I've been saying I just took a sabbatical for 9 months, just to focus on myself. But it does feel that way, I feel like I came in just with a renewed level of focus to be able to come in and just crush it this year.
And crush it you shall. Let me ask you this. You see a lot of people, and it's optimism and glass half full, and like, I'm with that shit. But where is it important to also check in and be cognizant of poor choices that you've made in the past? Or is that something that we should just completely abandon?
Of poor choices that we've made?
Yeah, just in general, people. You, yourself, me, right?
Yeah, I think that I probably think about those more than I think about the good choices that I've made, right? Like, I don't know if everyone's that way, but I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I definitely see a lot of those mistakes, and I think we just as humans don't want to make a lot of those same mistakes again, and sometimes we do fall into a rut of just doing the same thing over and over and over again. But I think it is good to let those mistakes fuel us. But I think we really have to be the type of people that I think we have to be always analyzing what we're doing. And I think a lot of people are too prideful to even realize that they're making mistakes or that they're not doing things correctly because they're making a ton of money or they're getting recognition or whatever. And it's like, yeah, you're making a ton of money, but you're not a great leader, or you're getting all this recognition, but deep inside you're not a good person or whatever, right? So sometimes we have to have that self. We just have to be able to analyze ourselves, to be able to check ourselves, and be able to realize, to be able to see, hey, are we actually, maybe have a self-analyzation of, what are the things that we're doing? Are we actually benefiting other people? Are we just doing things for ourselves? Are we whatever? And I think that when we do that, we realize that there are things that we need to change, and I think that there's always going to be things that we need to change, but the more that we can analyze, the better that we can become.
Yeah, I've always found it interesting because I do it a lot. I think about the past a ton. And as I've gotten older, I've become better at being able to be mindful of things I've done and think poor choices I've made and the impact they've had on myself and people around me, while not simultaneously beating myself up about it, maintaining a positive mindset. And I think I don't know that it's necessarily it comes natural to people to be able to do that. I think it's almost like a skill, like a coping skill, right? To where like you can be mindful of these things and have them present in your mind, but not go into your day like this day sucks, right? So it always interests me to talk to people about that, like
Well, I'm probably not the best person to I definitely beat myself up a ton. It's like yeah, like there's a ton of whatever, like there's a ton of good stuff that I've done, but I'll think back 10 years about 10 years back the one time I didn't open up a door for someone. And it's like, you know what I mean? Like that's the type of stuff that I get hung up on, and so I need to do better about that for sure.
Yeah, well, we can all do better. See, I'm the type of person where I think about yesterday where I held the door open and they didn't say thank you, so I'm kind of petty, right? Like, whatever, it's all good. Listen, we're
That's funny, man.
Pet peeve of Mike Stern's: if somebody goes out of the way to hold the door open for you, just say thank you. Especially there's always like that unwritten rule of like how long you hold the door, right? And what is that distance?
Are you the type of guy that opens up the door for someone while they're like on the other side of the parking lot? And now I got to run. I got to get like my first mile of 100 Mile June in
here's
before.
The thing. If I did this at basketball on Wednesday, one of my guys, Lonnie, that I play ball with in the morning, we play basketball at 6:30 a.m. And it was cold, and it was wet, and he was objectively far enough where you typically wouldn't hold the door for somebody. I held the door for him, but I made sure to say no rush, right? Whatever. Like I don't want you to feel like you got to sprint to open to the open door, right? And he said thank you, and it was great. And that's why I love Lonnie. Good dude. We get into it on the court, though. We're very competitive.
Well, it was pre-basketball, so you do have that. At that point, it's just considered a warm up. So if it would have been at the gas station, it would have been different. But at least you can justify it pre-basketball.
Fair enough. I see there's so many things on social media and the way people portray themselves, and not necessarily in our community, just in general, right? And there's a way people portray themselves, and it's like the best case scenario type shit, right? Where it's like everyone's posting their best. And I feel like it's tough for kids because kids that see that, they aspire to be that. And if their life's not like that, whether it's her body doesn't look like this girl's, or her relationship doesn't look like this, or they're not on that vacation, I think it causes issues for younger kids, and it may create some insecurities. And I think the people that doing it may have some insecurities as well. I think we all have insecurities. Nobody likes to talk about it, right? But there's something that we're insecure about. Is there anything that you were insecure about in the past that you've managed to overcome? And if so, how did you do that?
So it's so funny that you say that. So let me say this beforehand. If you look through my Instagram, you scroll all the way down to the bottom, it used to be just beautiful photos. I was the type of guy that would go on vacation and would take 100 photos, and then 2 months later would still be posting vacation photos. And it's so freaking petty, but I used to do that, and then at some point I just stopped posting altogether because it was all fake, right? And so then now if you look through all my stuff, it's like kids jumping, and like it's my life. It's just regardless of whether it's good or not, right? So I'm just gonna give you whatever it is. If I'm posting like a weight loss photo, I don't really care. Like, I'm gonna post a photo without my shirt, and if it bothers you, just unfollow. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I think part of it is getting older, and being a dad. I think just having kids in general just takes a lot of your pride away. You know what I mean? But to answer your question, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I've always been super conscious of like my overbite or whatever, right? And it was at this point, it's just like whatever. It doesn't matter. Now I just kid around with my wife, and I tell her, I was like, whenever we have a successful exit or something like that, I'm gonna go and get some Hollywood teeth or something like that. But no, I mean, yeah, I think I was super self-conscious at one point of just like my teeth or my weight or whatever, right? And even like, maybe this isn't something that I've necessarily spoken about a lot before, but I grew up in Hilton Head, South Carolina, and I was one of the only Hispanic kids especially when, in elementary school. And so that was something that I got made fun of a lot for. And I think part of my subconscious was like, I got to really step it up and make sure that my English is really good. And I get people that tell me all the time, you don't sound like you're Hispanic. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know. Like, am I supposed to have like maracas sounding in the background when I speak or something like that? Like, one of my wife's friends just told her the other day, one of her friends was in town and she met me for the first time, and she told my wife, she said, I'm kind of disappointed that he doesn't have a Spanish accent.
That's definitely going to be a clip, by the way.
Yeah. So anyway, so just with me growing up that way, that was something that I was self-conscious about too, of like just being Hispanic at one point, right? And so again, you just grow. That was just something like when you're a little kid and you get made fun of for stuff like that. You just start becoming self-conscious of those types of things, and even like, yeah. So, but to answer your question, I think just getting older and having kids, and just the consistency also of posting on social media. A lot of people I hear all the time, oh, I don't like going live, I don't like hearing myself, all this stuff. Dude, you just got to do it. I mean, I had Joe Hughes tell me one time, he's like, you have such a good personal brand. He's like, I don't know if you're doing that on purpose or not. I was like, it's definitely on purpose. Like, I definitely work to post, a ton, and, I'm making sure that I'm connecting with people, and I even like set out time to leave comments and likes and all this stuff. But it's all consistency, man. Like, it's just doing it. If you're afraid of getting out and doing live videos on Facebook, you got to do it. You got to do it enough times I mean, if you look through how many live videos I've done on Facebook, it's ridiculous. We had to do the podcasts. I had to get through enough episodes of the podcast for me to get comfortable speaking into a microphone and all these things, right? Or I had to do enough gym selfies or whatever, right? So you get to the point just where you do it enough times and you stop caring about having crooked teeth or whatever.
Yeah. So for what it's worth, your smile lights up my day. So,
oh, thank you, sir.
Fuck the naysayers. And to boot, you're exactly right. And I'm gonna let everyone know. You heard it here first. No one gives a fuck nearly as much as what you think they do in your head when you're going to turn that camera on and hit record, or you're going live on Facebook about the small things that might be bothering you consciously and subconsciously as to why you don't want to do it. Just fucking do it.
Yeah, I think for contractors that's huge, right? I think a lot of contractors are afraid of going live on Facebook or whatever, but it's so good, like just having that content, right? Like just from a marketing perspective, obviously, of having that content being top of mind, having that trust, having all that stuff, right? Just I see some guys. There's a guy on my Facebook that just pops up all the time. I don't actually know him, but he every single day he's taking his selfie and he's like, "What's going on, everybody? We're here at this build, blah 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 blah," right? And so it's every single day he's in front. And I don't know, he might be like have recorded the same video a million times from 100 different angles and just post it every single day for all I know. But for his customers, like, that's huge, right? Like they see, and he's talking about like, look, we're covering up the plants and we got this roof paid for by the insurance minus the deductible, and we've got this like whatever, and then or like, hey, it's lunchtime and we're almost done or whatever, right? But that goes such a long way, just being able to just put out consistent content.
So good, so true. How many kids do you have, Diego?
2.
What's one thing you've learned? What's the most important thing your kids have taught you? We talk about what we teach our kids and our responsibilities as parents, between whomever it is you're co-parenting or amongst ourselves. I think about it a lot, but I think we should put some energy into what our kids teach us too. So, what's the first thing that comes to mind as far as something that your kids have taught you?
Something that my kids have taught me. I think that they've taught me to not be extremely prideful. That was one thing before having kids that I remember telling my wife. We had talked about having kids, but then when we were actually trying to have kids, I was like, man, I don't know that I actually want to do this, because we used to go out. We lived in a college town, and so we would go out and have pizza at like 2 a.m. And I was like, we're not gonna be able to do that anymore. So yeah, man. I think they have taught me humility in the sense of like, it's not about me anymore, right? So I gotta go and I gotta pick up kids, or I gotta go drop off kids, or I gotta go take my son to Ninja Warrior, or I gotta take my daughter to dance class, or I gotta do this and whatever, and I think for what it's taught me, it's like sometimes we think that there's things that we want to do, right? So, man, I want to do this, I want to do that, and that's going to make me happy. When in reality, you become so much more happy when you focus on serving other people. And so I think that's a huge thing. And obviously, like with your kids, like it makes me happy when I see my son smiling at Ninja Warrior because he loves Ninja Warrior, right? Or when my daughter's dancing and she's like the freaking Alexa going off at the house of, Alexa, can you play Frozen or whatever? And it's like, and my daughter's like standing on top of a entertainment system screaming let it go or something like that. And in a normal scenario that sounds miserable, but when you're watching your little 4-year-old do that, it's cute, and that brings more joy than whatever it is that I would have done that I gave up because I decided to have kids, right?
think those are some really good lessons. You mentioned humility. How do you, I also think it's important to be proud. Is that the what's I guess that's not really an opposite though, right? Like you have being humble, and then you have what's the antonym for being humble?
No, I think that there's I mean, and this isn't to say, man, I'm the most humble person in the room, or anything like that, right? It's like that's like something I'm having to learn, like that God was like, man, you really need to learn this, so I'm going to send you, So anyway, to answer your question, I think it's super important to be proud of the things that you're doing and wear it like a badge of honor, right? I think that's a must, and I think a lot of people, yeah, I just think it's super important. Like, be proud of the things that you're doing, and be proud of where you came from too. Like, that's something that I've had to learn as well. Like I didn't, like my parents, I had great parents and all this stuff, but we, just kind of grew up very poor and grew up, immigrant household, all this stuff. We came to the United States when I was 9. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. We with other people, right? And we be proud of that. Be proud of what got you to where you're at now, right? Don't forget those things as well. And I think that's almost more important than just being proud of, like the accomplishments are always cool, but where, don't forget where you came from as well, I guess. And to your point, I'm going to say this, like you made a point in the podcast that we just filmed, you talked about some of the things that you had to overcome. And, our show is the Rise Above show. And so we specifically make it a point to talk about some of the failures and stuff like that we've gone through, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, they'll go through the failures and they just want to show the flashy lifestyle and all that stuff. We talked about social media, all that. How do you, I feel like a lot of times we connect more, though, with the people that will talk about their failures and will talk about all those things, and they're proud of those things. They're proud because they were able to overcome and rise above, right? I think of my friend Eric O that spoke at RoofCon this year, and he gave this great keynote on stage of his struggles with drugs and stuff like that, and how he was able to overcome, and now, being able to lead organizations and help other people to be able to do the same things, right? For me personally, the accomplishments are cool. It's cool that we're doing stuff with RoofCon, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm more proud that, of just the where you came from and where you're at now versus just the little accomplishments along the way.
Yeah, I agree. And I think figuring out, and Google did confirm, in fact, that the opposite of humble is proud. So I did check on that. I think it's, there's an equation. I don't know what the answer to the equation is as far as, how much on this side you should be humble versus proud, and what's going to be perceived as arrogant if you're wearing that badge of honor. And honestly, I don't want to say I don't give a shit, but it's become less important to me over the years. I just try to do what I can be to be the best person I can be, and tolerate the guy that I see when I look in the mirror, So I
think you're ultimately correct. I think ultimately it's just a matter of if you can live with yourself at the end of the day, you can go to sleep and not not be haunted at night by the decisions you're making. I think ultimately the ball's in your court.
That's the word.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you had mentioned the keynote Eric O gave, and my experience with being an alcoholic and drug addict, and I think it's tough. I think it comes back to insecurities. People don't want to show that side of themselves to people. They may think that they'll think less of them, but I gotta tell you, the shit that I went through and the shit that other people have gone through in those types of scenarios, and dude, everyone has their own hardships, and you only know your hardships, and just because everyone's hardships are hard. I think that's really important to understand, right? Because like some people come from a place where their life started with fucking awful trauma, and it's gotten better, but it's like you never know where people came from, and you learn to cope based off of your experiences. And if the worst thing that ever happened to you is the worst thing that ever happened to you, guess what? It's the worst thing that ever happened to you, right? So that's going to have a toll psychologically on you. But working through those things and persevering, it's given me an incredible opportunity to become on my way to being successful someday.
I think ultimately, on the point of, on all this that we're talking about, I think the ultimate thing is just, when talking about humility and pride and all that stuff, like, I think it just falls back on, like, you ultimately just become happier when you're focused on helping other people. I think when you do that, like, everything else just kind of starts to fall into place, right? I think that's how I would, all the other stuff, like, I think it's just kind of secondary to that. For me, at least, like, I just feel like I've dealt with a lot of stuff in my life, and I just know, like, if I'm focused on helping other people, I'm automatically happier. So,
I like that. What's a fact that, or a piece of information that people would find interesting that you haven't mentioned on another podcast, that people don't know about you, that they can only find exclusively on the Mission Control podcast?
Man, I feel like I'm a man of hidden talents. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that I just don't talk about. But I'm sure we could have a talent show, and I could have a lot of random talents that you would not guess.
What's the most interesting one that comes to mind?
I mean, I can juggle. I can
really.
Yeah, I can juggle. I used to play in a punk band in high school. Mm-hmm. So that was a good time in my life. That was fun. I played the guitar and I sang.
Oh shit! Why don't you give us a soundbite of one of your songs?
I'll send you one, and then if you want to post it somewhere, you can do that. Yeah. But dude, it's so funny. So I grew up. So I'm 31. The 2008 thing happened, like, when I was in high school, right? So on top of, like, being immigrants and all that stuff, like, we kind of got hit with a terrible time to, grow up. We just didn't have a ton of money and all this stuff. But I remember my dad, it was my birthday, however old I would have been turning in 2008, and I told my dad that I'd started learning the guitar. My uncle gave me this old beaten up guitar, and I told my dad that I wanted a new guitar, and I showed him which one that I wanted. And my dad was like, yeah, like, if you get good grades in school, whatever, then I'll buy that for you for your birthday. Well, then my dad, like, lost his job, and he, so I didn't think anything about it. I was like, I'm not going to get it, like, whatever. I didn't think anything about it. And on my birthday, I got home from school, and he'd gotten me that guitar. I don't know how he afforded it or anything like that, but it's just a good. So I still to this day have that guitar, and it's seen things at this point. It's all beaten up and all this stuff, because of course when you're like 18 years old and thinking you're a rock star, you just don't take care of stuff, right? Yeah. And because it's so funny, because, like, we couldn't afford, like, a case for it, so I just had, like, this little tiny cloth case that it came with, and my friends would give me rides to stuff, and it would, like, be in the back of pickup trucks and stuff like that. It would just kind of go everywhere, and I had to get it repaired a bunch of times. But anyway, guitar, that was a big thing. I haven't played much the last couple of years, so I would say that I'm a little rusty on that right now, the juggling.
Oh, you're definitely
probably random other stuff. we'll do that. We'll juggle the little RoofCon balls next time.
Yeah. So, in
You know what's
closing-
funny too? I think I talked a little bit about this with you. Talked about facts that people wouldn't necessarily know about me too. That's how I got into marketing, because we were putting together all these shows, like little DIY shows at frickin' coffee shops and all this stuff, and we would like print out banners and all this stuff, and we had to get like, we'd get like 200 kids to come out to a random coffee shop on a Thursday. You know what I mean? And it was like, I feel like that really is like, we started doing like Facebook events and all this stuff, and it just like one thing led to another, and literally I lied about that when I when I got my first marketing job when I was like 21, 22. I was like, oh yeah, I have experience marketing, when my experience, like, and I told them about all the stuff that I'd done, but really it was like I had experience putting together these shows and getting kids out to them, and it, like, I had no idea what I was doing when it came to marketing. But a lot of the stuff that I did when I was starting out with marketing was just figuring out scrappy ways of just making stuff happen. And I'm what I call a figure outer. So I feel like that's another fact that people maybe wouldn't know about me. You got some good exclusive facts there on Diego.
Fucking like that. I wouldn't say it was lying necessarily.
It was over embellished.
Well, I guess you're just a piece of shit then. All right, for over embellishing. So we'll make sure that we make that part of like the promotion post, like find out why I called Diego a piece of shit.
Yeah, Diego's a big fat liar.
Liar, liar, pants on fire, and we're gonna Photoshop, inflamed pants.
Hey, I was 21 and maybe 22, and I saw the company had a marketing position available, and I was like, I bet I could do that. And I applied for it. You needed like all these qualifications for it, and somehow I got the job, and we grew a ton when I was there. And again, I just had no experience, and I feel like part of it was just like that I wasn't following any sort of rules because I didn't know what the heck I was doing.
That's funny. All right, you show me yours. I'm going to show you mine. I'm going to share an exclusive piece of info here on Mike Stern. So I was about 8 years old, and I was going to... Here we had things called Wilson Farms. They were convenience stores. They were then acquired by 7-Eleven. At the time, it was Wilson Farms, and one of my friends, we went in, and he had a plan. He was a booster. This gentleman, his name was Joe, loved stealing stuff, and I was always like a really cautious, like scared kid, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. And he takes like one of those big like s'more style setups for Hershey's, like the big blocks of Hershey's, sticks them in his pants, and I fucking take a sleeve of Starburst and I slide them in my pocket. And so we got apprehended by the store employee. Like,
oh man,
you're going, yeah. So we got caught, and my stepfather, made me call him, and dude, that was the only time he had ever physically disciplined me. I whooped my ass, right? I mean, I'm on the couch, curled up. I'm trying to like fucking block and parry punches, slaps or whatever. The dog's jumping and dude, that ass whooping was the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's hilarious. That's funny.
So I'm a piece of shit too. It's fine.
That's so funny, dude.
Yeah. So, dude, this was fucking amazing. I really appreciate you coming on. This was so much fun, and we will certainly do it again. If somebody's interested in, roofing.com, Revolt, RoofCon, what do they got to do?
Just come to RoofCon. You can find out everything there. So roofcon.com, get some tickets, and that's it.
Sweet. And definitely, if you haven't already, connect with Diego on Facebook. He's a good dude. You don't know that by now, except for when he fucking lies.
Hey, sometimes, listen, I'm not going to justify. I was about to say something, but...
It's all good. It's in the past. We've atoned for it. It's good. We're a better person today. And, yeah, dude. I appreciate the audience. I appreciate Roofer. Thank you guys for sponsoring, and I appreciate
Big shout out to Roofer. They're awesome. That's all I used. So
let's fucking go. All right, and we gone.